The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives. Sir, I have the honor to transmit herewith a facsimile copy of a letter received from the Honorable William Francis Galvin, Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, indicating that, according to the unofficial returns of the special election held December 10, 2013, the Honorable Catherine M. Clark was elected Representative to Congress for the 5th Congressional District, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. With best wishes, I am, sincerely, Karen L. Haas, Clerk.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal, rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the gentlewoman from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the Honorable Catherine M. Clark, be permitted to take the oath of office today. Her certificate of election is in front of you. There is no contest and there is no question that has been raised with regard to her election.
Without objection, will Representative-elect Clark and the members of the Massachusetts delegation present themselves in the well of the House? And will all members rise? And will the member-elect please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office which you are about to enter, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations. You're now a member of the 113th Congress. Without objection, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure for me to introduce Catherine Clark with the always important reminder that there are fewer than 12,000 men and women who have had the honor in American history of taking this oath. This institution has been home to Presidents of the United States, members of the Supreme Court, members of the United States Senate, who have gone far and wide in helping America to succeed every day. Catherine Clark, as one of those individuals who has now joined this important and august body, succeeds again a very favored colleague of ours who served in this institution with distinction for 37 years, Senator Ed Markey. Mr. Speaker, Catherine Clark is well grounded in local government, having served at the school committee level. She served in the legislature as a member of the House of Representatives and as a member of the Massachusetts Senate. She has also served time as a prosecutor. She is well distinguished in the state of Massachusetts and won a very handsome victory. It's an honor for me to submit to you for the first time the Honorable Catherine M. Clark from the state of Massachusetts.
If the gentlelady will suspend. Will the House please be in order? Gentlelady may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Leader Pelosi, Congressman Neal, and the Massachusetts delegation, and all of you for this very warm welcome. Thank you to my family and friends who are here with me today, my husband Rodney and my 3 sons, Addison, Jared, and Nathaniel, whose love every day makes me the luckiest mom and wife in the world. And my parents, Chan and Judy Clark, I thank them for their love and support and for teaching me that even when times are hard, approach life with gratitude, optimism, respect for others, and a sense of adventure. And my in-laws, Art and Lee Dean Dowell, I am so grateful for all they do to keep our family running smoothly and all the love they give us. And my brother John and his partner Justin, thank you for being here and for all your support. And I am so grateful to the voters of the Massachusetts 5th Congressional District for their confidence and the profound privilege of representing them. Senator Markey, you set a standard of excellence during your time in the House. I look forward to carrying on your work for the people of our district and partnering with you and the entire Massachusetts delegation to move Massachusetts and our country forward. Thank you. The Massachusetts 5th, from Revere to Cambridge, Waltham to Framingham, is home to some of the country's and the world's most respected universities and innovative companies. We are deeply... Keep going. We're proud of these incredible institutions. But what defines the 5th District is its families. And as I have talked with families around their kitchen tables, I found they are just like mine, and I'm sure they're just like yours. We are teachers, small business owners, CEOs, and machinists. We work in stockrooms and boardrooms. We are recent immigrants, and we are descendants from early American settlers. We are of all political ideologies, and yes, deep in the heart of Red Sox Nation, we even have a few Yankees fans. What unites our families is they work hard, play by the rules, and what they ask in return is a fair shot at the American dream. Our families want to find a good job, send their children to great schools, and count on a secure retirement. They want to know that the issues they talk about around their kitchen tables are the issues that we'll talk about here in Congress. I am honored to join the Massachusetts delegation and represent the people of the 5th Congressional District in this House of Representatives. I look forward to working together with each of you for the families of my district, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.
Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the Chair announces to the House that in light of the administration of the oath to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, the whole number of the House is now 433. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The question is on adoption of House Resolution 438. Those in favor indicate... Those in favor indicate aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. Gentlelady from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
Those favoring the vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. Members will record their votes by electronic device. It's a 5-minute vote.
The House now voting on debate rules for the budget agreement and the short-term extension of the Farm Bill. If the rule is approved, there would be 70 minutes of debate on the budget agreement and 40 minutes on the Farm Bill with no amendments allowed. We don't expect a final passage vote on the Farm Bill today. That debate could get underway, but it's expected to be finished up tomorrow. We are anticipating a vote on final passage of the budget agreement at some point today. The House working on that 2-year federal budget agreement that was released earlier this week. It cuts back the reduces the sequester budget cuts, and as a result increases overall federal spending. It still cuts a number of programs and increases some fees as well. And as I mentioned, the House will begin work today on the short-term Farm Bill extension. Our House coverage continues live here on C-SPAN.
On this vote, the yeas are 226, the nays are 195. The resolution is adopted. That objection, a motion to reconsider, is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The Journal stands approved. Gentleman from Georgia. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. 5 minutes. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
So into another procedural vote now on the floor of the House on approving the record of yesterday's floor action. Next, we expect a debate on 3 bills being brought up under suspension of the rules today, including Defense Department programs and policy for 2014. The other 2 bills require states to report on deaths while in police or prison custody, and a State Department report on U.S. aid efforts in Haiti's earthquake recovery. Now, the Defense Authorization Bill includes a 1% military pay increase, permission to continue war efforts in Afghanistan, and a military weapons program. It also bars funds for future military base closings and transfer of detainees from Guantanamo Bay to the U.S., but allows for some transfers to other countries. Again, those 3 bills yet to come shortly here on the floor of the House, and then later work continues, debate on the 2-year federal budget agreement. Live House coverage on C-SPAN.
Yeas are 250, the nays are 147. The journal stands approved with 2 present. The chair lays before the House an enrolled bill.
H.R. 2871, an act to amend Title 28 United States Code to modify the composition of the Southern Judicial District of Mississippi to improve judicial efficiency and for other purposes.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. The House will be in order. Members are asked to remove their conversations from the floor, to clear the well and the aisles. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and agree to House Resolution 441.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 441, resolution providing for the concurrence by the House in the Senate amendments to H.R. 3304 with an amendment.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from California, Mr. McKeon, and the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Smith, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous material on the matter under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the fiscal year 2014 National Defense Authorization Act. The NDAA is the key mechanism by which the Congress fulfills its primary constitutional responsibility to provide for the common defense, and this year will mark the 52nd consecutive year that we've completed our work. The NDAA passed the Armed Services Committee with a vote of 59-2. It passed the full House by a margin of 315 to 108. Likewise, the Senate voted its version of the bill out of committee by a vote of 23-3. This year we had unique challenges in bringing back a bipartisan, bicameral deal to the House for final consideration. Yet despite those obstacles, we were able to negotiate a bipartisan bill with our Senate colleagues. I'm especially grateful to Ranking Member Adam Smith, as well as Chairman Levin and Ranking Member Inhofe of the Senate Armed Services Committee. They all rolled up their sleeves, and we got the bill done in the allotted time. And believe me, that was no small hill to climb. On a related note, I'd be remiss if I failed to note that we will be voting today on another hard-fought measure that is critical to defense. We have in sight a budget agreement for the next 2 years that provides a measure of predictability for our military. As we take the first steps to get this deal enacted, I wanted to ensure members that the NDAA's authorization levels remain in compliance with the Budget Control Act, and the House, the Senate, and the Republican Study Committee approved budgets for 2014. What makes this bill such an important piece of legislation are the vital authorities contained therein, which is why Chairman Dempsey, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Amos, Commandant of the Marine Corps, the Washington Post, the National Guard Bureau, and others all weighed in this week urging us to complete consideration of the bill. This legislation pays our troops and their families. It keeps our Navy fleet sailing and military aircraft flying. It maintains a strong nuclear deterrent. This year's NDAA also provides badly needed reforms to help alleviate the crisis of sexual assault in the military. I want to thank Congressman Mike Turner and Nikki Tsongas of our committee for leading a bipartisan group of members who worked tirelessly on those reforms. Also, Joe Wilson, chairman of the subcommittee, and Susan Davis, his ranking member, for the efforts they made in this issue. They were long overdue. The NDAA covers many more critical issues, but I will close in the interest of time. Before I do, I'd like to thank all our members of the Armed Services Committee for their efforts. I'm grateful not only to the hard-working chairs and ranking members of the House, but also to all members of this body for recognizing the importance of this vital piece of legislation, along with all members of our staff on both sides of the aisle. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to claim the other 20 minutes time in opposition, though I am not opposed.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I yield myself 4 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
I want to thank the chairman and echo his words about how important it is that we pass this piece of legislation. It is critical to our national security and critical to supporting our troops, to make sure they get the pay and the support that they need to do the job that we all have asked them to do. This is never an easy process. We worked, between the two of us and between our committees, and then worked with the Senate, House Republican, bipartisan and bicameral. And I'm sure if any one of us were so designated as God of this piece of legislation, there are things we would change about it. But that is the nature of the legislative process. You come together, you compromise, and you put together the best product that all of you can agree on. And that's what we've done. And to not pass this at this point is to jeopardize our national security and to not support our troops. I think this is an excellent compromise and something that needs to be passed. I think we would all agree that we wish we could have done this through the normal conference committee process, but the Senate has their rules and they had difficulty getting to that point. But I want to assure everybody that this was a fully negotiated piece of legislation. We engaged the Senate, both Republican and Democrat. Chairman McKeon and I worked very closely together. Our staffs worked very closely together. This is an excellent, important bill that needs to be passed for all of the reasons that Chairman McKeon mentioned. The steps forward it makes on sexual assault, the support it gives to our troops as they are in battle in Afghanistan and trying to protect our national security elsewhere. So I really want to urge everyone to make sure that they vote for this and support this. And I want to use my remaining time to talk a little bit about the budget resolution, or the budget conference committee that we're going to talk about later. I completely agree with Chairman McKeon. In the spirit of what I said about the NDAA, about the necessity of getting our job done, we need to pass a budget. I know it impacts all manner of different other pieces of government, but I am most familiar with what it does to the Department of Defense to not have a budget, to not have appropriations bills, to have to go from CR to CR to government shutdown threat to actual government shutdown to another government shutdown threat. You simply cannot function as well as you should or as well as you would if you had a dependable budget that said, here's what you have. It will never be what all of us want, but it is better to have the predictability of having an appropriations process. So it's critical that we pass the National Defense Authorizing Act. It's critical that we pass the budget. We have to function as a government. We all know how low our approval ratings are. And I think it's great. Democrats take great comfort in the fact that Republicans aren't popular, and Republicans take great comfort in the fact that Democrats aren't popular. But all it means to me is none of us are popular, because we need to get our job done. We got two great opportunities today to do that, to show the American public that this body functions, it works, and it will in fact live up to its responsibilities. And in the case of the National Defense Authorizing Act, one of the most important responsibilities, and that is to provide for the common defense. I urge everyone to vote for this important piece of legislation and to support the budget resolution coming later today. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the Vice Chairman of the Armed Services Committee and Chairman of the Intelligence, Emerging Threats, and Capability Subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Thornberry.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, let me commend the Chairman and Ranking Member of the committee and the staff for getting us to this point. In all the 52 years of the National Defense Authorization Act, I think this has been one of the most challenging years to get a bill actually passed. Not only have they done that and are about to do that, get us to this point, but it's a good bill with many significant provisions that enhance our national security. Among those provisions are those under the purview of the Intelligence and Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee that authorize more than $85 billion worth of critical national security activities and programs to include cybersecurity and operations, combating weapons of mass destruction, combating terrorism, defense intelligence and special operations forces, science and technology and research in a host of areas. And I want to express my appreciation especially to the subcommittee staff for the work they have done on it. But as we look ahead to the threats and also the capabilities that are coming before us in the future, we also have to update our oversight mechanisms here in Congress. In this bill, there are provisions known as the Oversight of Sensitive Military Operations Act, which are a big advance to make sure that we can conduct the proper oversight even as activities are conducted by various weapon systems, even as they happen all around the world. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate what the Chairman and Ranking Member have said. This bill, combined with the budget agreement, don't solve all our problems in defense, but they provide absolutely needed stability so that we can return to a way where military leaders and private sector leaders can plan for a change. We have not been in that situation in recent years, so passing this bill, passing the budget bill are significant advances for our country's national security, and I hope all my colleagues will agree. I yield back.
Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, the ranking member of the Air Land Subcommittee, Congresswoman Sanchez.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you both to Adam Smith and to my fellow Californian, Buck McKeon, Chairman, for getting us to this point. It's was very, very difficult. I know that on the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee, Chairman Mike Turner, his leadership, really led us to be able to get our work done. Our subcommittee looks at equipping our troops in particular. Everything from body armor to what types of planes they fly in, how we transport them, etc. And this NDAA, I believe, reflects the needs of the troops in the field and our high priority acquisition programs as reflected in the President's budget. It authorizes an additional $400 million for the National Guard and Reserve account, and another $90 million for M1 Abrams tank upgrades in the Army National Guard. The bill includes $1.3 billion for the U.S. Marine Corps ground equipment, and we continue to support Global Hawk through 2014. One of the most important things that we do in our subcommittee is oversight of these very large acquisition programs. And in particular, this year, we took a look at the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter and the body armor program for our troops. How do we have the right body armor for men and women? How do we make sure we're upgrading and keeping it moving forward in a time when we're bringing back troops and we're getting out of 2 ground wars? And of course, the F-35, our only production plane for the next 20 years, which we share with some of our allies. So it's important to make sure that we get that cost down. These are the types of oversight that we've done. The bill also includes $746 million in targeted reductions to eliminate wasteful spending in the DoD. I wish to thank all of the staff who helped us on this bill, in particular Doug Bush, John Wason, Jesse Tullison, John Sullivan, Tim McLeese. Thank you very much, and I urge a yes vote on this. Thank
Gentleman
you.
from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the chairman of the Sea Power and Protection Forces Subcommittee, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Forbes.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2014. With the chairman and ranking member's leadership, I believe that this bipartisan bill supports our men and women in uniform and provides them the necessary authorities and funding levels to defend our national security interests. As to the Sea Power and Protection Forces Subcommittee effort, I continue to be concerned about both the size and composition of our Navy's fleet. I'm especially troubled by our physical trend lines that serve to diminish our military capabilities and embolden potential aggressors. In testimony before our subcommittee, Navy admirals indicated that sequestration may serve to reduce our Navy's force structure to 257 ships by the year 2020. The Commandant of the Marine Corps indicated that he sees the beginning of a hollow force we have fought hard to avoid. This path is simply unacceptable. I think this bill does a good job of reversing some of these negative trends and moves us in the right direction by authorizing 8 combat ships and ensures that we retain and modernize our current fleet proposed for retirement until the end of its design service life. It also provides surety to the continued construction of our aircraft carrier and attack submarine force structure while continuing necessary oversight and cost control efforts to preserve affordability. The negative fiscal trend lines are not only resident within the naval forces, but are also significantly impairing the ability of our Air Force to project power. The Chief of Staff of the Air Force indicated that he anticipates an almost 10% reduction in the Air Force's force structure. Once again, this is not sustainable and erodes our combat capability. While I'm pleased with the efforts of my subcommittee regarding the projection of global force capabilities, we still have a long way to go. The bill provides strategic Air Force investments in terms of both the KC-46A tanker program and the long-range Stryker bomber. These are critical capabilities that need to be nurtured carefully. This bill also includes important cost-saving initiatives that provide the Navy and Air Force with the ability to procure the E-2D Hawkeye and C-130H Super Hercules aircraft using multi-year procurement authority. Mr. Speaker, for all of this, I hope that we'll support this bill and give the added resources that we need for our men and women in uniform. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Davis, the ranking member on our military Personnel Subcommittee.
The gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 3304, the National Defense Authorization Act of fiscal year 2014. As ranking member of the Military Personnel Subcommittee, I'm pleased this bill includes a number of provisions that continues our commitment to our armed forces. I want to thank Chairman Joe Wilson for working with me in a bipartisan manner to support our service members and their families. Mr. Speaker, I also want to recognize the Chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Buck McKeon, and Adam Smith, the ranking member, for their really excellent, wonderful leadership. I want to thank the hardworking staff as well, the Military Personnel Subcommittee, Deborah, Craig, Dave, Jeanette, John, and Colin. Sexual assault has been a focus of this committee for the last several years, and this bill continues to make significant progress toward increasing victim empowerment and holding commands accountable at all levels. The portions of this bill addressing sexual assault send a clear message. If you can't contribute to a safe and a respectful environment, then get out. Beyond sexual assault, the bill provides additional separation authorities as the service has reduced their end strength. These authorities will be crucial to the Department's ability to execute the drawdown in a responsible manner while ensuring that all serving members and their families who also serve are compensated appropriately. And additionally, this bill continues our oversight responsibility and commitment to prisoners of war and those missing in action. The bill requires the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for POW and Missing Personnel Affairs to disseminate appropriate information on the status of missing persons to family members. It also requires a report detailing statistical data on the recovery of remains of missing service members from various conflicts. The bill before us continues to recognize the sacrifices of those who serve our nation in uniform. During a time when thousands of Americans still remain in combat, we in Congress have an obligation to ensure that these men and women and their families are supported and provide them the resources they need to carry out the mission. I urge all my colleagues to support this bill.
Gentleman from California.
I yield 2 minutes at this time, Mr. Speaker, to my friend and colleague, Chairman of the Military Personnel Subcommittee, the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith, for your leadership. The National Defense Authorization Act provides our warfighters, veterans, and military families the support they need, deserve, and have earned. Specifically, this year's legislation includes over 30 reforms related to combating criminal sexual assault in the military. Reforms, as initiated by Congressman Mike Turner and Congresswoman Nikki Tsongas, include stripping commanders of the authority to dismiss a guilty finding, significantly limiting commanders' ability to modify court-martial sentences, establishing minimum sentences for sexual assault-related offenses, reforming Article 32 process to protect the victim. Other provisions would reaffirm our commitment to the reserves by requiring minimum notification before deployment, require the Secretary to improve the integrated disability evaluation system, and reauthorize many special pays and bonuses for our service members. The bill does not include the administration's request for military retirees to pay more in fees. From the beginning, the military personnel provisions have been a bipartisan process. I want to commend the ranking members, Congresswoman Susan Davis of California. Additionally, I want to express dedication and appreciation for the dedication of our subcommittee staff, John Chapla, who is truly a Virginia gentleman of the VMI tradition, along with Deborah Wada, Jeanette James, Craig Green, David Giacchetti, Colin Bossi, along with Military Legislative Assistant Chad Sidnor and Military Fellow Marine Sergeant Lee Duncan. I urge my colleagues to support the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2014. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to Ms. Bordallo of Guam, the ranking member on the Readiness Subcommittee.
Gentlelady from Guam is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Defense Authorization Bill for fiscal year 2014. In a time of tight budgets, it is important that we provide the resources to make sure that our forces are properly trained, equipped, and appropriately manned. That is the essence of military readiness. Our military must maintain a high level of readiness to address a wide range of threats across this globe. And in this bill, it helps to achieve that goal. And this is all about keeping our nation secure and safe. In particular, this bill makes significant progress in advancing our posture in the Asia-Pacific region. The bill upholds the U.S. commitment to modernizing our forces' posture, which is a critical component of the strategic rebalance to the Asia-Pacific region. In particular, Mr. Speaker, freeing up Japanese funds for the realignment of Marines from Okinawa is financially prudent and confirms our support of the Guam International Agreement. I thank Chairman McKeon, Ranking Member Smith, my chairman, Mr. Whitman, our partners in the Senate, the staff on the committee, and in my personal office for their support in developing this important bill. I urge my colleagues to support this measure and pass it so the Senate can act on this critical measure, which is so important to our men and women serving this nation in defense. And I thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the chairman of the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2014, the 52nd consecutive National Defense Authorization Act. I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee of our Armed Services Committee. Under the full leadership of Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith, the support of Loretta Sanchez and our subcommittee's ranking member and a superb staff, ours is truly a bipartisan effort. This year's bill reflects Congress's substantial bipartisan and bicameral efforts to construct meaningful reforms aimed at combating the pervasive issue of sexual assault within our military. I want to thank Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith for their dedication that this body's solution on these issues has been absolutely bipartisan. These legislative initiatives are unprecedented and the most powerful steps made to date toward the eradication of sexual assault in the military. Specifically, the bill includes all provisions of the Be Safe Act and Coast Guard Strong, which were introduced in both the House and Senate by Congresswoman Zongas and myself and Senators McCaskill and Collins, respectively. It includes bipartisan measures introduced by Representatives Heck, Walorski, Nome, Castro, Davis, Sanchez, and Duckworth. Additionally, it includes the significant efforts made by Senator Boxer and Representative Spears, Zongas, and myself in the past months to reform Article 32 process and ensure victims are not subjected to unnecessary intimidating tactics. Instead of searching for ways to remove a commander's authority, this bill establishes systematic processes and reforms which will provide military leaders with the tools they need to ensure that victims are cared for, that perpetrators are brought to justice, and that commanders are held accountable for what goes on within their units. This bill enhances the rights of victims, strengthens military whistleblower protection laws, increases training requirements, and improves in ways that the service needs to respond to sexual assault reporting. And it ensures that perpetrators are appropriately held accountable for these serious and violent crimes. In addition to sexual assault, the bill includes provisions adding $90 million for Abrams tank upgrades and $75 million for heavy improved recovery vehicles that would ensure that our armored vehicle industrial base remains active. Lastly, the bill strongly supports the Joint Strike Fighter program. I urge everyone to support the bill. Thank you.
Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Massachusetts, Ms. Zongas, ranking member in the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee.
Gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, Congress has come together every year for half a century to pass the NDAA and support our service members. This NDAA includes the Be Safe Act, which it was my honor to work on with Representative Mike Turner. It takes significant steps towards combating military sexual assault, an egregious crime that exists across the services. The bill makes historic changes to commander authority, removing the ability to overturn a jury verdict. It mandates a dishonorable discharge for those convicted of sexual assault and makes sure that every victim of military sexual assault gets an attorney. This NDAA is necessary to require the Pentagon to continue important sexual assault prevention measures such as the successful Special Victims Counsel program that could fall by the wayside if not mandated by law. It also includes many other reforms advanced on a bipartisan basis by many other members of the committee. While we have more work to do, I want to thank Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith for their dedication in getting an NDAA done, and Representatives Turner, Davis, Wilson, and the many others who worked on a bipartisan basis to get this, address these the great challenge of sexual assault in the military. I urge the House and Senate to pass this important bill.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the Chairman of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Rogers.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of the FY14 National Defense Authorization Act and H.R. 3304, the underlying bill that would waive the time limit for the President to consider awarding the Medal of Honor to a handful of American heroes, including Mr. Benny Adkins of Opelika, Alabama, along with several other deserving veterans. While this honor has long been delayed, we thank them by this action today. I'd also like to thank the hardworking men and women of the Anniston Army Depot and all they do for our men and women in uniform. This bill will help provide them and all of the installations in the 3rd District with the certainty they need in the coming years. As Chairman of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, I will highlight some of the important oversight the FY14 NDAA includes. First, this bill fully funds the B-61 Life Extension Program. The bipartisan and bicameral Armed Services Committees agree that this program is vital to our national security, our strategic deterrent, and the extended deterrence we provide to our allies in Europe and Asia. I would also note the agreement makes clear that Congress will not provide 1 penny to implement the New START Treaty reductions unless the administration first comes up here and tells us what it plans to do and gives us a chance to state whether or not we agree. Secondly, this bill provides $358 million to increase the President's budget for missile defenses, including our cooperation with Israel. This bill also includes an important national security space provision. It ensures the U.S. will not or is not relying on space capabilities of the People's Republic of China, and it promotes more cost-effective procurement and commercial satellite services. Mr. Speaker, we would not be here today without the leadership of Chairman Buck McKeon. I want to thank him for his leadership and all that he does for our men and women in service. I'd also like to thank my friend and ranking member Jim Cooper of Tennessee for his dedication and professionalism this year. With another year, we may even see eye to eye on SEC football, but I doubt it. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill that the full text of my remarks be included in the record at the appropriate place and in the appropriate manner. With that, I ask my colleagues to vote yes and yield back.
Without objection. Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection. Gentleman is recognized.
I'd like to thank Chairman McKeon and Mr. Smith for all their hard work on this bill. In the spring of 2011, a very brave band of Americans executed a mission that brought the country to its feet in ending the reign of terror of Osama bin Laden. Their heroism on that night is something that makes us proud even today. That success, though, was rooted in many things that happened many years before that. There were scientists and researchers that made those night vision goggles that made the raid possible. There were engineers and technicians that made the stealth helicopters so successful. And most importantly, I think, there were men and women in our intelligence community who helped sift through all the haystack to find the needles necessary to make the operation happen. The quiet, methodical work that protects our country is the essence of this bill. It is research and development. It is readiness. It is all the things that are necessary to act and act decisively in the decisive moments in history. It's important that all members support this bill because those who raise their right hands and swear allegiance to the country are worthy of this support. I'm pleased that both Republicans and Democrats will support this bill today. I'm happy to join in that support, and I yield back.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend and colleague, the Chairman of the Readiness Subcommittee, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the National Defense Authorization Act. I'd like to thank Chairman McKeon and Ranking Member Smith for their hard work on this, as well as the Ranking Member of the Readiness Subcommittee, Madeleine Bordallo. This bill addresses the impact of sequestration on our national security and, perhaps most importantly, the most damaging effects on our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, over 51,000 of whom are fighting for us today in Afghanistan. Specifically, this bill allocates nearly $3 billion readiness dollars across the components of the active, guard, and reserve components, providing needed funds for critical programs, including the Flying Hour Program, facilities maintenance and sustainment, depot maintenance, and combat support. The bill boosts the DoD's ability to respond to crises like Benghazi by adding $75 million for the expansion of the Marine Security Guard program at our diplomatic posts around the world, prohibits DoD from initiating another round of BRAC to ensure appropriate focus on the orderly and secure withdrawal from Afghanistan and a well-informed assessment of our nation's defense strategy moving forward. It also provides $11 billion for MILCON projects for urgently needed base infrastructure. It reauthorizes 1.5 million acres of public land for training range access to ensure our forces have the ability to train the way we expect them to fight, and ensures adequate funding for reset and retrograde from our nation's longest war in Afghanistan. As we vote, we need to be mindful that our highest duty is to ensure the readiness of our forces. This starts with providing our men and women who volunteer to wear the uniform with the right training and equipment to do their missions with the advantage of overwhelming military superiority. We must ensure that they never enter a fair fight on our behalf and that they can complete their missions and come home safe. I'd like to thank the HASC staff director, the entire HASC staff, especially the readiness staff, Michelle Pierce, Ryan Crumpler, Jamie Lynch, Dave Sinicki, Nicholas Rodman, for their diligent and dedicated work to get this bill completed. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you tell us how much time remains for each
Gentleman
side?
from Washington has 9½ minutes remaining. Gentleman from California has 5 minutes remaining.
Thank you. With that, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Connecticut, member of the committee, Mr. Courtney.
Gentleman from